Okay, let's look at research assignment number one, comparing Trajan's column to the Vietnam War Memorial. So you're going to have two different submissions for this assignment. The first one will be a progress check, depending on the year. It could be the 13th and then the 20th for the final slide presentation, but that's all determined based on the school year. I will give you 2 times to work on it in class. We'll do that on Wednesday. So this year we'll be doing it on the 6th and the 13th. So why are we doing research? One of the things that AP really wants you to do is they want you to be able to look through materials and to find good research for the different artworks. This is really going to help you, especially on artworks that are different than the ones in the 250. You'll get a good knowledge of what are good resources and be able to fully understand other works that we haven't covered. But we're going to do research based on ones that are going to be tested. So I have a few different links on this page for you to kind of help you out. So what I suggest that you first do is to read through the project description sheet. And I have a printed version for you as well. And you might want to highlight kind of the key elements of it. And then you're going to start to compile your research. So you can choose either to do a Word document or a research slide template that I've already created. And then you're going to want to make sure that you include all of the things that you see listed here. Those things are on the project description. They're in these handouts. So I'm not going to go ahead and open all of those, but I'll show you what they look like. And then you're going to turn in a slide presentation. That is the form that we're going to use. And you're going to need to make sure that you turn that into Canvas on the due date. So let me go ahead and get out of here so you can see some of these things. So this is the project description sheet that you have in your hand. This is an example of an essay question. You have 2 30-minute essay questions on the actual test if you're going to sign up for it. And so here's an example of one that was given in the past. And you can see how it totals up to more than 5. And this is the type that gives you examples at the bottom. So your assignment is to compare these 2 works of art, focusing on the concepts of war, history, and memory, point of view, narrative, so telling a story, as well as power. And so you're going to compare them with contextual evidence, content and form, and then function and content. And then you're going to want to make sure that you do all of this looking at specific arguments with specific points, so that claim and evidence, the incorporation of visual elements, include a title, and so you'll have to come up with your own. You want to make sure that the title is relevant to the themes. You also want to make sure that you are clear and concise about your organization. You want to show that you invested time and effort and thought into the assignment, and then include a works cited page as well. So you can compile your research either in this kind of form that's a Google form, so you can cut and paste information into that and then add a works cited at the end. Or what I would probably suggest that you do is to use my Google slide template. So this is something that you will eventually change and edit. So you'll put your new title on the title page. Then you're going to want to make sure that you do one artwork at a time. It's not necessary for you to seesaw back and forth in your comparison. Your comparison would be later in your essay. So I have a whole section based on just the column of Trajan. And so here's contextual elements. And so things like, how does the work of art relate to the time it was created? What was going on when it was made? Where was it located? What is the connection to when, where, and why it was made? Then I have given you several slides for content and form. How was it made and what were the materials? So you would put your text information and then maybe an image. in what style it is. You'd want to describe Roman style and how that's different than Greek style. And then lastly, how the information was arranged. So visually, how did they organize it? Then the next section is about the function. And so there's a few slides for this as well. Thinking about how the arrangement affects meaning. What is the meaning and why was it made? And then how was one supposed to experience the work of art? For these two images, the point of view of the viewer is very important in the understanding of the work. So I want you to make sure you relate to political or social ideology of each culture, time period, as well as the setting in which it was done. And then you'd want to have a work cited or cite your resources at the end. And then you do the same thing for Maya Lin's Vietnam Memorial. So very similar things. The difference here is instead of describing Roman style, you would describe minimal design. So you have to do some research on what that looks like. And obviously, if you have questions, you can ask me. And then you do all the others, similar sort of sites. Okay, so this template, you would change and alter, change the fonts, change the organization, the colors, you'd add imagery to it. So if we go back to the assignment here, there's a few more things for you. I want you to make sure that you read through the assignment. So for me, when I'm reading through, I would highlight or underline keywords, and I have example there for you. You'd want to make sure that you have all of these things, which we already mentioned. The one thing I would probably really want to emphasize here is when you're making a presentation, you want to make sure it's organized and clear. So try to make sure you use colors that you can read. You want to make sure that you have a good size of text. It's not too small. You can always make 2 or 3 slides for one of those template slides that I made. You want to make sure you can see the imagery and you want to make sure you can read the text. So make sure the font is clear, and you can make color coded, you can add titles and captions to make sure that it's fully understood. It's not necessary to write a whole paragraph. Bullet points is fine for this because you want to make sure that you're getting across your ideas. So here are the comparisons that we had on those slides. And then visual ideas. On your slides, you're going to have visual evidence. So when it comes to how does it reflect the time and it was made, you can do portraits of rulers, right? You can do the portrait of the artist. You can find timelines, dates, and maps, anything that would help relate it to the time in which it was made. For media, you could do raw materials, process, and diagrams to illustrate that. For how was it made, you could have videos or step-by-step images or diagrams to help me understand how it was made. You could describe the style. You could have close-ups or definitions. You could also have examples of the style by giving other examples to show how it's similar to other pieces. How does it tell a story, right? You can have the whole image, you can have close-ups, and you can have a diagram to explain. When it comes to what is its purpose or function, you can have, once again, the whole parts of the image, maps, diagrams, whatever is necessary. For location and setting, hit the button, right? For location and setting, you can go once again to maps, diagrams, and plans, and then placement. Probably the best thing is to have images of people in those environments, right? So have maybe a map, but also maybe include images from the point of view of the viewer and how people interact with the pieces. So you're going to have to create a works cited page utilizing the Chicago style. So I have the official website as well as one from Purdue that's very good. And then you could also look up a free generator. And then research suggestions. When you're finding your research, you just want to make sure that it's from a reputable source. So stay away from tourism sites or propaganda sites. Smart history and your textbooks are good resources for both of them. Major universities and colleges, major museums, those things have people who are researchers and scholars who work at them. So those are going to be really good sites as well. On Canvas, I have a few links. This is one of them. I may add to it, but I don't want to do too much of the research for you. Okay, and then I also have some examples. So that's where I'm going to end with it. I'm going to show you a couple of examples of student work. Now, with student work, you may not copy this student's work, but I wanted to show you some different examples of why did that do that? At the end of the presentation here, and it closed it out. Okay, I'll try this again. So you can see that they gave it a title, right? So make sure that you come up with your own title. I don't want you just copying the title of this student. And you can see that they included the imagery as the background, right? So that's kind of an innovative way of doing it. And then you'll notice the next slide is not identical. They didn't use the coin or the bust as the background. Instead, here we have the historical context. They have a map. They have the architect. They have location, construction. So notice how there's titles, there's illustrations, there's the research material. Now, here's where I'd say there's a good example of it's hard to read the text. Maybe changing this to white, right, makes it so that you can read it better, right? So I want to make sure I can show you some examples of clarity. Okay, this might be a little bit too hard to see, so maybe a simpler font might be easier to read. So one without the serifs. So that's the little curls and cues, right? So maybe if I go to something clearer, it might be easier to read. And then here we have Vietnam War Memorial. So did similar sort of theme for these pages. Okay, so once again, this is just a student example. It's not that yours needed to necessarily be look like this, but you want to make sure that you have visuals to represent them as well. Okay, so the first deadline, you want to make sure that you have some of this already completed. But I would say if you can get at least 50%, you're probably on a good track.